Hi, everybody. Welcome to Discover College Soccer. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Coach Bennett at Eastern Illinois. Welcome, Coach.
Hey Matt, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Excited to talk to you. It's June 18th when we're talking, so I guess the big question is, were you out there making calls on June 15th to rising juniors?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually bucked the trend this year and did not make a single call. And I think you know, it's on a Sunday this year. It's on Father's Day. I was actually traveling to work at camp anyway, and I kind of went against the trend and had a peaceful Sunday as opposed to a lot of my colleagues, and I didn't mind it. But we've been making a few calls this week, getting started a little bit slower, but yeah, it's the start of the marathon, not you don't have to do it all at once.
Right, right. The gun just went off, right?
That's right.
Um, well, the with the gun just going off on the 27s.
Mhm.
How where are you at with those 26s? Where do you like do you have a target date as to when you hope to wrap up that class, or what does your normal timeline look like these days?
Yeah, I mean, what is normal these days? That's
Yeah.
the question. No, we got out there pretty early for the 26s, and we knew we wouldn't need like as large of a class as like our 25s. We've got 10 true freshmen, so we knew it'd be smaller than that. We signed or verbaled about three pretty early on for our 26s, and then as of right now, we think we're still looking for about two. Two different positions, and we've been really patient with those last couple of spots because for one, there's been a lot of turmoil in the industry and trying to figure out how many we have, what's coming back, eligibility, roster limits, all that fun stuff. And then we've just had a lot of good interest too. So we're kind of waiting until the end of the summer and get through all of our recruiting events. We have a camp that's going to be on campus ourselves. And then probably at the start of preseason, early in our fall semester, we're trying to figure that class out and get them kind of signed, sealed, delivered. That way in November we can announce them.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the 25s being a bigger class, but you said
Yeah.
two freshmen, so does that mean a lot of transfers, or
Yeah,
what is the transfer portal doing to you guys these days in your recruiting?
it's a good question. I will say, like probably most people were logging in and looking at it every day. For us, again, we with the 25 class, we just had a lot of, we think, good fortune with the players we evaluated from the high school and club standpoint. So we actually have 10 true freshmen
Oh,
coming in, old school, like
oh, okay.
like the way college sports used to be. So it's interesting. We're gonna have two transfers on our team who've been here for a year now. So they came in last year, but we were a team that didn't really rely on the transfer portal to bring players in, and we haven't had anyone go out into the transfer portal for several years now. So it's maybe a bit naive. We're always going to have younger players on the field or developing, but sometimes those quote unquote 4-year kids, they really buy into your process and your team culture and just what you're selling a lot more. And we felt that way this year, so we're gonna try it out this fall.
Okay. Well, where is it that you like to go to see players? Kind of what's on your must-hit list, or what are your normal tournaments or places you go to watch games?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere and everywhere. I think, a school like Eastern Illinois of our size, mid to smaller major, it's a place where, I was the assistant coach here for the women and also for the men before that. And so you learn you have to turn over every rock and stone. You have to look under every log for talent. And I think that sometimes coaches maybe do themselves a bit of a disservice by only focusing on these big marquee events. And I know, and we have limited budget, right? So you got to know, invest your dollars where it's smart, and those tournaments are obviously those. So we'll go to the ECNL and GA events, of course, and we hit the ID camp circuits and maybe go to some regional events as well. And we have kind of our local, clubs from St. Louis and Chicago and Indianapolis and Louisville that we're pretty close to. But again, some of those big events, you got 150 coaches looking at the same 22 players, and if I go to one of those things and I'm just staring at the same players that Florida State or Tennessee is, then am I really being efficient with my time? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny. We've got players that have played at that high level, and I've coached players from the international level as well. But we've got one of our major contributors last year who got some really good postseason recognition, was a President's Cup player. Very small kind of club, and that was just her thing. And she's had immense success at our level. So it just goes to show that you have to look in the right places, but there's talent everywhere if you're willing to give them a chance.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned camps. Do you guys do your own ID camps? It sounds like you guys work other camps as well. How important are they in the overall recruiting process for you guys?
Yeah, we're blessed. We've got a lot of good support here from the institution, and so we don't have to run 10 ID camps a year for financial reasons. So I've actually scaled those back because there's just so much, I think, congestion in that space. There's every school's having camps, and then there's the satellite kind of ID camps from the different third-party companies, and club costs an arm and a leg anyway. So we only have one a year right now. We do ours. We've got one coming out July 25th, and we sort of put all of our eggs in that basket. And we've done quite well the last 2 years with that model. And that allows us to focus on our own team a little bit more. And also, you mentioned some of those other camps. Like I'll go work a high school team camp with another university soon and get some eyes on some players there. And we'll go out to some of those combine type things around the country as well to scout. So I think they're really important though. Again, club, you might watch 15 minutes or 25 minutes of a half and then move on to the next field. And if your player got in, then great. If they didn't, then oops. So for us, I've identified lots of players at camps. Sometimes it's players you're following up with and saying, "Hey, I've seen you. Can you get you to camp to see you more?" And we've also seen kids just out of nowhere at those camps that really generate the interest just from that opportunity by itself.
Yeah. So whether it's camp or game or tournament or wherever, kind of what makes up that hierarchy of things you're looking for in a player both on the field and off.
Yeah, I mean, there's some soccer stuff that is probably very consistent from what other coaches look for. There's a minimum kind of threshold athletically and technically to play at the college level, especially Division One, and those are usually the easier things to see. Because we we get paid to watch soccer all day every day, so we generally know a few things about what we're looking at. But as you sort of circle a player's name and go, okay, she's got a great first touch, she's a finisher, she's quick, good individual defending, understands the game, hopefully. Those things lead you to conversations, and after that point, you're trying to get to know the player, maybe the family a little bit. But for us, it's just like, okay, well, what kind of teammate is she? And at that point, if we haven't already, we'll engage the high school and the club coach and say, well, what's she like in your environment? How does she train? What's she like when things go her way, when things don't go her way? Are the family a factor? Is it a positive or negative thing from a coach's standpoint? So we want to hear what it's like. Because, at the club or high school environment, they might see them 2, 3 times a week, maybe more, maybe less. But for us here, it's like an everyday thing for, call it 4 years. So I personally enjoy going to work and I want to continue to enjoy going to work. And so that's largely affected by the people around us, whether that's staff or very importantly, our team and our players. So if you're going to make my life, more stressful, then you better be really, really good because otherwise we want to have a group here that's just ready to fight for each other, enjoys training every day, enjoys the school, and just makes life fun as a soccer coach.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we talked about, the changes and there is no normal right now.
Yeah.
So when you're doing your recruiting, especially now, wrapping up 26s, looking at 27s, kind of where are you at in terms of roster size and what you're
Mhm.
looking to do and how you're navigating whether your school's opting in, opting out? Is it 28? Is it
Yeah.
not 28? What's it like for you as a coach and how are you navigating that?
It's been stressful. I think there's been a lot of wait and see, and I think at our level we're slightly insulated against some of those changes because we're not the school that's trying to generate $20.5 million in 2 months to start paying out our athletes. It's just not really our situation. So for us, it's more along the lines of okay, if we were to opt in as a school to the house settlement, it would give us some flexibility to bring some of that NIL stuff in-house. Those that we do pay out. But then really the effect that we had resistance to, and I had this resistance was the roster limit, which soccer would be 28 because, for me last year I had 25 on the roster and that, when you get a few injuries, it can bring some challenges to your depth. But what we really enjoyed about that was people are happier, playing time goes around a little bit easier. And we had a really good group to start with, I think, and then they maintained that culture. So for us, we love that. And then this year, as I mentioned earlier, we had some big classes coming in, and a lot of talent that was hard to say no to. And so we were planning to up the roster to about 32 this fall, which is our goal. And eventually we would come back down, right? So when that news dropped about, okay, here's the house settlement and roster limits, we are like, great, that where'd this come from, And so that was the resistance we had because I think 28 is a pretty reasonable number for all the reasons I just kind of spelled out. But I like having the choices as a coach to make myself. We want to manage our rosters the way that we see fit because not every team has the same needs. Or, if you're a new coach rebuilding a program, you might want to bring in as many of your own players as quickly as you can, but you might be told from administration, well, you can't cut anybody. So that gives you a problem, right? So sometimes that's when you see those rosters balloon a little bit, and that might be a decent reason. But anyway, I think for us, with the most latest developments, we we might be leaning towards opting in, but now we're allowed to potentially grandfather some players and call them designated student athletes that would not count against our 28. So we're figuring that part out right now and seeing what that means for us.
Yeah, well, it's going to be an interesting, well, an interesting couple weeks before the July 1
Yeah.
deadline, and yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just yeah.
Ask me
Well,
again next week, I might have a whole different answer for you.
That's a good point. Um, well, let's talk a little bit more about the school. You've got a unique perspective as an alum. You're on the men's side, women's side, so you must enjoy Eastern Illinois. So talk to us
Sure.
about what makes it special. What are some of the things you like about it? Maybe some things we wouldn't even know by going through the website.
For sure. Yeah, I grew up here, and so I have that kind of background that's maybe not as common to hear anymore, but grew up here through high school, up through college, and now into where I am now. So yeah, I've been around for a long time, and I've seen the campus and the university change and also stay the same, And I think for me, the biggest thing is yeah, who you surround yourself with is so important. I mentioned that with like the day-to-day work environment as a coach, and at EIU, there's just a lot of really good people. And that might be a cliche you hear a lot, but you picture a somewhat smaller college town, and a university of like 8,000. Charleston's about 20,000 by itself. And we have a sister city, Mattoon, that's about the same size. So that kind of makes up the area, but it's a Division I school, tightly packed in the middle of town, surrounded by a somewhat rural college town. So it's not for everybody. And I think that what I really liked, and maybe this is what helps sometimes with recruiting, is that I really know the place that I work at, and I think if you're a player that comes here looking for, if you need an urban environment, if you need a Starbucks on every corner, and some of those distractions that can be really cool, like living in a big city like Chicago, but if you need those things, we're not it. We're far from that. And I think it's just important for recruits. I tell them this all the time to make your checklist and have your non-negotiables, your red flags, your green flags. And I think that for us, if you're someone that's looking to get a good education, to not be completely and utterly distracted by some of the things in college, but it has all the facilities and abilities to really develop you as a soccer player and play some really good high level competition here in the Midwest. It's like, boom, we can meet all those needs. So I enjoy that. I enjoy that I can walk to work, and we have a great facility that's right next to where the freshmen all live, and so there's some benefits to that sort of smaller campus where you don't need public transportation and you're not going more than 10 minutes to get to a class. So I like that. I like the pace in Charleston. I probably should lock my doors, but I know if I chose not to, I'd 9 times out of 10 I'd probably get away with it. So for us, we're getting a lot more questions from parents these days about safety, and because of our demographics and our size, we happen to be, I think, the second safest campus in America, according to like U.S. News or something. So we sell that, obviously. We sell the personable experience about Eastern, and that for me is what's always stuck with.
No, that sounds great. Well, one of the challenges for players coming out of high school, especially going D1, really balancing the demands of a D1 program versus the
Mhm.
demands of being a student, right?
Yeah.
So how do your student athletes really balance the two, and what kind of support systems does a school offer to make sure they're successful on both sides of that coin?
Yeah, there's a lot of personal responsibility that gets thrown on them. Sometimes all of a sudden, depending on where they come from, as an academic before college. But for us, we're blessed. We have a lot of really good students in our team. I think team GPA was always in the 3.6, 3.7 kind of range, which is awesome. I take zero credit for that as a coach, other than bringing some pretty smart kids in. But we also have like 15 or 16 different majors on the team. So we're dealing with everything from, the really challenging majors like nursing and pre-med and even education, to your business, and your sports admin and stuff. So it can be tough. We do have an interesting time with class schedules because of the variety there, but as coaches, we do what we can to make sure we work around them so we don't have anyone that's always missing practice. Like we want our whole team there. Um, so we have some things like that as coaches. We try to support them. We have a really good um, academic center here on campus that's just for athletes. So all of our girls would get their general student advisor, when they start as a freshman, and that becomes their major advisor eventually. And you also have someone who's dedicated just to women's soccer from athletics that can look at that schedule that your advisor made and say, well, do you really need 18 credits in your fall competition season, or can we get that down to 12? And you can take this one in this semester, and this professor loves athletes, whatever, just some of that experience that we get. So we've got, I think, for us, that's probably one of those equalizers, where we find a way to make up some of that ground on the Power Four schools. I think that our support is really, really robust, and again, the number of kids we have versus the number of people working for you, it makes you feel like you're not just a statistic at Eastern. So there's a lot of personal care, and professors are great too, and I can chat all about our team, but we have a lot of support structures within the team as well to look after the young ones.
No, that's great. Well, you mentioned kind of managing the schedule, so take me back to October, heart of that OVC schedule. Walk me through what does a typical week look like for a player in terms of winter classes, games, practices, meals, the whole bit.
Yeah, this is a common one recruits ask a lot. So in season, last fall we trained in the mornings really early. So we had a lot of 8 a.m.s. We had some night classes. So we went like the 6 a.m. practice, and that was a blast. I'm sure the girls loved it, but we got through it. So, we typically play Thursday, Sundays in the OVC if it's a double, if it's two games on the weekend. So Mondays are typically our day off from everything. You have your classes, but you can just focus on class and getting some rest. Tuesday, if we were training in the morning, that'd be the first thing back. And even then, after a full weekend, you have some girls that might have played 90, 180 minutes, and some that have maybe played little to none. And so by Tuesday, especially as that accumulates over the course of a season, some of those girls still need more recovery. So our sessions might be designed a bit differently for, this group versus this group versus this group, just making sure we don't overload them physically. We have a lot of ways to monitor that stuff, but we would be training then in the morning, and yeah, in the afternoons or the rest of your morning, it's your time to go to class. It's your time to hit study hall, which all of our newcomers have required study hall hours to knock that out. Tuesday's a lifting day. We still lift twice a week. So you hit that, and there's probably some film or some kind of meeting. So for us, just to touch on that, something I think might be a little bit unique is that we started this kind of organically last fall, and it worked out really well where we would meet with the girls before a match weekend and then after a match weekend and say, hey, what are some words? What are some feelings? Some essentially some goals that you guys want to hit that have nothing to do or not directly tied to the end result in the score. Because sometimes after a game, oh, we lost 1-0, the sky is falling. Or we won 3-0, and oh, we're the best team in the world. But like within that is data, right? And there's context. And so for us, it was like, okay, the girls might choose something like trust. That was a big word that kept coming back around. We want to evaluate ourselves based upon trust and hard work or aggression. Those were words that they would choose. And we would come back after the weekend and go, okay, well, 1 to 10, how is that? Or maybe this, group of 5 or 6 talks about this one. And, it's a way for us to get the girls together. Not super confrontational, but still, putting a mirror in front of us and looking. So it's kind of like team bonding a little bit, but you're cheating because you're evaluating your game. As they went, they learned some words are very result based, and maybe that's not such a good word. So they learned to reflect and be a bit more critically, I don't know, do more critical thinking as it relates to their performance. So that's a Tuesday thing as well. And I took too long in that day, but essentially we're training Wednesday and maybe traveling, and then Thursday we're either playing, so we're on the road or at home, and then traveling back after, or we're training if it's not a Thursday game. Friday is another one of those where you've got like a post day or a post game day training session that might require different things physically. We also have a lift. And again, lifting in the fall is very recovery, maintenance based, making them feel good. And then Saturday, there's a session to go to for Sunday. And, after that initial meeting, we're probably throwing film in either collectively or on individual small group basis to look at how the last game went and then to look ahead at the scout for the next opponent. So yeah, fit in a social life, fit in team bonding, fit in all the other things, and the kids get pretty busy at this level.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about the team. Obviously, we talked about roster size, but talking about the rest of your roster, staff, what staff do you have? What role does everybody play? Maybe what support staff are there that we haven't mentioned?
Yeah. So yeah, myself, my assistant coach, Deanna Hecht she's real big. She does do the goalkeepers, and I like to throw in with goalkeepers as well sometimes, but she's been great with them. We've got, I think, one of the strongest keeper cores, at least in the conference for sure, and she helps maintain that and add to it. But Dee is kind of, team culture aficionado. She's really, really good at I think the mental performance part of athletics, that's something she specialized in with her degrees, and it's something that I'll read up on, but I think we talk about mental health a lot now, and I'm glad that's getting more attention. But mental health and how it relates to performance, the needs of a student athlete versus a regular student, that's stuff that she's great at, but we're also using some of our other resources on campus to really make that a focus point for our team. So, but that's D. We've got a full-time strength coach that works with us as well as two other sports. We have a full-time athletic trainer that just divides her time with us and I think women's basketball. And then we have our support staff. I mentioned we have Jen King, who's our academic advisor. She's actually the head of that department, but she works with us in women's soccer. We have a nutritionist on staff. We're working with a professor who specializes in sports performance and that mental health coaching. So we kind of have an extended staff that, around here, everyone's doing more than one thing. But we have all those same type of resources that a lot of the big schools do. And so for us, we just tell our girls like, man, all you have to do around here is ask. If you have the courage to ask for help or to not be shy, you can develop in so many ways. And so we're always bouncing ideas off each other. And our strength coach is looking at our GPS data. He has access to that to make sure, okay, well, I'm not just going to have an isolated lift that's built for maybe a men's football team for a women's soccer team that just played 180 minutes. So we have a lot of really good feedback in that loop between staff members.
Sounds like it. Well, in terms of you as head coach, kind of talk to me about your coaching style, maybe the style of play that you guys look to play there.
Yeah, again, knowing where I am, where I'm coming from, I think, yeah, use a place that has a lot of potential, but as I've described, we're this kind of smaller under the radar Division I school, and I think there's a lot of blue collar mentality, right? Like I mentioned, staff have to do two or three things, and we all kind of have a really good collective identity. Like we want this place to succeed. So we look for players that have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Oftentimes we're getting kids that weren't the center of attention on an ECNL All-Star game. They're the ones that might have been the glue players or been playing at a lower level but really killing it. So I think that there's a lot of girls we get that might not find, yeah, you might not be the first school they've ever thought about going to, but they get here for the right reasons and then they take pride in surprising people. So it kind of leads into my style as well, just because I think that we like to see ourselves as the underdogs. We've got a team here and a program that hasn't seen massive amounts of success in a while, so that's something I'm trying to turn around. We're looking for our first OVC championship in 20 odd years, and so that takes time. I think you have the weight of history against you there a little bit, but with our team, the first thing we focused on was let's make sure we get a group of girls in here that really want to be here, that respect each other, that are good teammates, that'll fight and play for each other, not just with each other. So that was year one, year two, and obviously this is my third year now. So we're getting more and more into that process, and I couldn't be happier about the team culture. So that part of it, all right, we're on solid ground there. You're never done, but you always want to make sure that's a focus of it. So soccer wise, it's okay. Let's bring in as much talent as we can, and let's really, really focus on developing the talent we have here. So I always tell our girls, it's like we're going to try to bring in this class, and then the next class is going to be there. So it's the job of the old class to kind of develop on this curve to meet them, and then that way we're always improving. So for me, that constant state of improvement, state of development, where we don't want to put too much pressure and anxiety on the girls because they have enough of it, but we have to remind them, hey, you're here to compete. You're here to get better. You can't just be the same player in year four that you were in year one. But if you fail, we're here for you. We love you still, and we're gonna not just abandon you because we believe in helping you get there. You just got to show us that. So Yeah, we kind of manage our team that way, and then style of play, I think it evolves. And now that in year three, we worked a lot on our possession this past spring, and we had a younger team the last 2 years that was really quick on the counter, and it was hard to stop them, but we didn't always do a great job with the ball. And so now, adding more and more technical players in, getting our younger girls that were a bit raw into more leadership positions, more mature with their game, we focused a lot on the way we moved the ball, the way we controlled it, and that's kind of the nicer parts of it. But from day one, the last thing I'll say is our team always knows you've got to work to defend. Like, our forward is the first defender, our goalkeeper is the first attacker, right? So for us, there you're not going to see our forwards just kind of taking a snooze while the rest of the team defends. They're going to get organized. They're going to work hard, and as talented as you are, it's hard to get in the field if you're not willing to chip into that team identity and defend the way we want you to. And that's usually one of the biggest transitions for, especially for attacking players coming from the youth game, is that they may not have been given a scout or a defensive identity or been taught even how to defend individually without diving in. That's such a massive thing. So we put a lot of emphasis on that to organize and make sure we're competitive. And then we can get that done. Then we get the opportunity to have the ball at our feet.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, hey, I really appreciate all the time you've given, and I'm just going to leave you with one last question, and that is, if you had any advice for anybody going through the college recruiting process right now, what would that be?
Just don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. If you're doing this stuff, you're doing it for a reason. You're probably a very high achieving person, and you have goals for yourself. And college soccer is a reachable goal. It's hard. It's supposed to be hard, but there's more opportunity now, especially for young women, than have there's ever been before at every level. So don't give up on yourself. I think it can be long and arduous. I've got stories of recruits that didn't work out, and then you come back a year later, or even through the transfer portal, and then it does work out for the right reasons. So I think you just have to know, or figure out what it is you want, what kind of school you want, what size. And then the harder part, which you might need some help with this from your club coaches, but look in the mirror and be honest and say, well, what level can you see me playing at? And then you just have to get focused, and a little bit of humility and realism along with some self-belief can take you a pretty long way in this game. So I think you just don't lose hope, and you keep grinding.
For sure. Well, Coach, really appreciate it. Wish you the best of luck. Hopefully, we'll talk the next time, and you'll be hanging that OVC banner. All right.
That's the goal. Thanks a lot, Matt.
All right. Thank you.